Hi. A couple of months ago, I posted a video on YouTube about the Roswell UFO, the so-called Roswell UFO incident. My philosophy was that what really happened was there was an Air Force stealth bomber that had crashed, and the Air Force covered it up. And they did two things. They came up with this balloon crash story, and everyone right away said that's a false story. And then they came up with somebody came up with this thing where there was a UFO that crashed, and there were bodies and pictures taken of the bodies going on airplanes and coffins and pictures of autopsies. And my theory, or philosophy, was that this is all faked by the Air Force to cover up the true story that a stealth bomber had crashed, and the Air Force doesn't want people to know about their top secret projects and have people at the same time panic about a so-called UFO crash from outer space with aliens running around on the ground, one of them wounded and being carried away. Um, and believe that why they made up this balloon story was to say that they were capable of making up false stories. And then, as far as the bodies going on the planes and the debris that was found, that was set out as a story by observers and people who found it. But the Air Force was also that this was a false story, also, because they're not stupid enough to put out a story about a crashed weather balloon no one would believe, and everyone jumping up and down on them and saying, well, you guys are you little idiots thinking that we're going to believe that. That's exactly what they wanted to happen. They wanted the public to believe they were capable of putting out false stories. And the hint was that the story switching over to the UFO crash with the bodies going on airplanes and pictures taken of the bodies going on the planes, was also a false story. They practically said it, that this whole thing is fake. I mean, they practically jumped up and down with the American flag and said the whole thing is fake, not just the weather balloon, but the bodies going on the air, the pictures of the bodies having autopsies. Why would anyone in their right mind do an autopsy on an alien, not knowing what's going to happen when you start cutting into that body? You have no idea what's going to come out and could instantly kill everyone in the room, or perhaps on the whole base. If that sounds far out, well, this whole thing is far out. Now, the Roswell UFO incident was 1949. We are now in 2022, getting closer to 2023. So do the math. It's 73 years, almost 75 years, and no one has come up with an explanation about what happened. And Roswell, New Mexico is making millions of dollars tourists. So they're not about to try and debunk anything. So who has this? If I don't have the answer, and I got very few views, who does? And I'm not saying I'm the guy that has the answer. I have a theory, and I think it makes a lot of sense that the Air Force would put out this uh, sort of bait false story with the weather balloons. So everyone say, "Oh, there's a fake story," and then put out pictures of the autopsies and put out pictures of the bodies going on the planes, so everyone would believe, yeah, there was a UFO crash and they're covering it up, and everyone's attention gets directed toward this UFO mythology crap instead of trying to decipher what really happened, maybe besides what that was or wasn't. The attention toward an aircraft crashing, a real aircraft like a stealth bomber, was completely misdirected, completely vanished by these stories. Now, at the same time, I just want to finish this video. I want to say, everyone says to me, that is really far fetched. I don't think my theories are far fetched. I think I have a very great insight here about what happened, and that makes a lot of sense. At the same time, for everyone else who thinks they're all a bunch of geniuses and I'm some kind of a fool, you don't have the answer after 75 years, and you don't have the insight after 75 years of examination by brilliant professionals to understand or say in real life terms what happened. It's still a very foggy mystery that's sort of like tomato paste. Who has the answers to this? No one in 75 years? Because you're looking in the wrong place. If you are constantly looking at the wrong place or thinking the wrong way about something, you're not going to come up with the answer. The answer you have to come up with is what you're thinking about, and the way you're thinking about it is most likely after 75 years is most likely wrong. Are we going to do what, 300 years of this foolishness? Let's do 1,000 years and still be stupefied about some mythological incident in Roswell, New Mexico. If you can't solve any problem, and it's been 75 years, anybody whose brain works after Kellogg's cornflakes for breakfast has to come to some deduction that the way they're looking at this problem is wrong. Trying to figure out the whole thing is smoke and mirrors and wrong. Because to get at truth, the first thing you have to put aside is everything that is wrong in the way that you're thinking if it's not working out. And any detective will tell you that. If you can't find the answer to a murder, the first thing detectives do is look at their methods. There's got to be something wrong with their methods, and that's exactly what they look at, and that's how they figure out the answer to who murdered who. And this is the same an analogy situation thing. You, after 75 years of all these brilliant people, professionals, can't come up with an answer. The reason why is because you're looking at the wrong information. You're trying to deduct an answer from the wrong material. The whole thing, the way you're thinking about this, is wrong. That's why 75 years later, after hundreds, maybe thousands of professionals have spent whatever amount of money and time looking at this, can't come up with the answer. Any detective will tell you, working on a mystery, a murder case, if they can't come up with the answer, they automatically start looking at their methods and say, this method must be missing or it's wrong. And when they find out the way that they're thinking about it is wrong, bingo, they solved the murder. And that's how you're going to solve this. I think I came up with the answer. Now you say whatever you want about me. It makes a lot of sense that the weather balloon was smoke and mirrors, the bodies on the airplanes were smoke and mirrors, and the whole thing was meant to people to believe there was a UFO crash, even though the Air Force hinted very strongly that they were lying about everything, and everything was fake, especially the bodies going on the planes. And no one is going to do an autopsy on an alien. That's got to be like some type of phenomenal suicide mission. You have no idea what's going to happen when you cut an alien open. You have not even a clue. You can set off an atomic explosion. That sounds far-fetched. This whole thing is far-fetched. This whole thing is Disneyland, smoke and mirrors. That's all I'm going to say for today. Jesus saves, amen.